everybody, welcome back to the shack. Today we're working on our 2011 Superduty F350 known as the Deuce. We're doing an evaporator core change out because the AC went out on it. We just want to put this video out there to help have some tips, help somebody else if they're trying to do this on their own and save some money. First thing you want to do is you got these handles on the A-pillar trim that go right up here. You want to take those off first. It'll help get them out of the way to help removal of the dash. And each one on either side, there's two 7mm bolts. You can kind of see it down in there in the bottom, and they're captured. So you take those bolts out, the 7mm socket, and pull those off. Next thing you want to do is there's these trim pieces like this on either side of the dash, and they just pull out. There's just clips on the back there, as you can see. You just pop these off either end of the dash. And then behind those pieces, and you pull the weather stripping back, there's two bolts on either side, and these, you'll see a bracket like this on either side. They're pretty similar, except the passenger side has a bolt lower, which I'll show you in a minute. You take these two bolts out on either side, and first, and then there's a trim piece up top here on either side, on top of the dash, that looks like this. It just pops right out. And on the driver's side, there's two bolts up top. You can see them there on the firewall, the holes for them. And then there's only one bolt on the passenger side on the top, which I'll show you later as well. I'll go to the passenger side. And then on the driver's side only, there's a special, you can kind of see it here where my left hand is. There's a hole over here with a rubber plug that goes in that hole. And there's a third bolt on the driver's side here that goes, it's kind of a tight fit in there to get that bolt out on the driver's side. And so there's that third bolt there, so don't forget that. And all these bolts, by the way, to hold the dash in are 10mm. So you got 7mm up here on either side for the A-pillars, and 10mm bolts holding the dash in. Also, there's a one bolt that sticks down. There's a bracket I'll show you from the back side because of the way we got the dash sitting on the seats here, that I can't show you. That'll be kind of one of the last. You can do these bolts in any order. And there's a bolt down on the bottom underneath the dash that you need to take out too. So we'll go I'm gonna pause for a second and we'll go over to the passenger side, and I'll show you where those bolts are on the passenger side. Okay, now we're over here on the passenger side. You can see we got the dash pulled back out of the way. So over here on the passenger side, same deal. You pull that trim piece away off the end of the dash here that clips right in here. You pull the weather stripping back, and you got one bolt up here, and there's another bolt down lower on the passenger side than it is on the driver's side. You take those two bolts out, and again, here's the trim piece on the top of the dash you got to pull out, and that engages this bolt hole here on the firewall. So you take those bolts out, and then that other bolt that I was talking about down low, here's the bracket here from the back side that sticks down, that there's a trim piece on that you can access from the driver's side that you take out with a small screw and remove that, and then you can get to this 10mm bolt down here. You'll see the bolt here. I'm pointing to the bolt hole in the bracket, and then that mounts here on the trans tunnel. So once you get all those bolts out, the dash is pretty much ready to come out, and then you can see there the steering shaft couples right underneath the dash. So you rotate the steering until you see the bolt up there up top, and it's another 10mm bolt. You pull that bolt out, and then it'll just steering column will pop right off, and then you can just swing everything out of the way. And once you start swinging the dash out of the way, you're going to be limited by this wiring over here on the passenger side. So you need to disconnect all these plugs here, which just all plug in right here just inside the driver's side door here. See, and then this orange cable here is the antenna for the stereo, and that just pops apart down low here. So you just disconnect these connectors on this passenger end of the dash, and then you can, once you have all those other bolts out, you can just pull the dash off, and it helps to have another person because this dash is pretty heavy. You can pull the dash back and lift it up, and it'll just rest right here on the seats, on the edge of the seats. And as you could see earlier, we had the steering wheel resting on the driver's seat, and then I got the edge of the dash here resting on the edge of the passenger seat. Sorry. Once you do that, then you can start the hardware for the actual air conditioning box. You got a bolt up here, and then you can see there's a stud over there that the box with a nut on it. You want to pull that off, and then all the rest of the hardware is accessed from the engine bay of the truck, which can be kind of a pain to get to. So once you get those two inside that bolt and nut off inside the engine bay, you have to come in here, and then you can see the hole where the AC lines and the heater hoses connect to the evaporator core and the heater core. And if I can get my phone here, just down under this bracket here, back in here, my hand's kind of in the way, you'll see there's a stud that sticks through there just off the tip of my finger, and there's a nut there that you have to remove. There's one farther back down in the back there. There's another one back there in the back with another stud sticking through with a nut on it they have to take off. And then there's one farther on the other side of the engine there. You come around. And it's tough to see, it's dark back in there. Let me get the light. You can see, again, just off the tip of my finger there, you can see the hole in the firewall where the stud stuck through. There's a nut there on that stud that you have to remove too. It's kind of a real pain to get to. If you got long arms like I do, you can reach it actually from underneath the truck. You can lay under the truck and reach just up alongside the transmission with a ratchet and a 7/16 or 11mm socket to get that nut off, which all these large flange nuts, which I can show you one, which look like this. These are all 11mm or 7/16 that you have to remove off those studs that stick through the firewall. Or you can use some long extensions and come across the top of the intake with a universal joint to get to that nut. And that one's pretty tricky to get to. One other spot, which I'll go to the heater core box, and I'll show you that there's one other bolt that you don't want to forget, is right here next to where the drain for the condenser, or the evaporator core drain, the condensate drain. Right next to it, there's a bolt in the firewall, and you can't really see it from the outside or through the fender well because it's recessed because of insulation and such. But that bolt too will get you if you don't find it. And then you can see here the other studs, one here and the one here, that and the one over here, that all stick through the firewall. They have those large flange nuts you have to remove. And then you have to remove these heater hoses, which can be kind of tight and tricky. You have to collapse these tabs and pull the heater hose off. And then you got one nut here that holds, with a bracket that holds the AC lines to this expansion block, which is attached to the evaporator core. When you get all that stuff taken off, you can actually pull this. As you can see, you can pull this whole box right out of the truck, and then you can work on it in a little easier space to get your evaporator core out if you're going to change that, or if you need to change a heater core, you can get to them both. Now here under this cover here where I have my left hand is the evaporator core, and there's 5 screws with Torx. I believe it's either a T15 or a T20 Torx. You take these screws out, and one of them is obscured. As you can see here, I got this motor here, sits down, screws down right there, and there's 2 screws holding it on, and it's covering one of the screws for this cover to get the evaporator core off. So you have to pull this motor off, which is 2 screws right here, and then this motor just pops right off, and it only goes in this drive hole here one way. and then there's the last screw right here, and then you can get this cover off. And once you get there's 2 screws holding this together, one up here and one down low, and then this just folds back out of the way, and you pull this foam rubber piece off like this, and you can go like that. And then once you get that cover off there, you can pull the evaporator core out and then swap out. You have to swap this expansion block out, and hopefully your new unit like this one did comes with some new O-rings to put your expansion block on, and then you just do the reverse to put it back in, and then you just do the reverse of what you removal to put the heater box back in. It'll probably take a little bit of finagling because all the studs that stick out of the box. You just have to be patient, and it'll all go back together the way it came apart. So I'm gonna pause here and we'll cut back to when we kind of get this thing reassembled, and we'll show you what's going on. As you can see, we got everything back together. The dash is back in, and the heater box, heater and AC box is all back in, and we got the AC charged back up, and it's all working good. Just a couple of notes to this job. It's definitely a 2-man job unless you're strong enough to bench press a small car and move this dash around. Because of the weight of the steering column and all the structural stuff behind this dash, it makes it very heavy and difficult to maneuver by yourself. Also, I highly suggest making yourself a couple of pins like these. These are 7mm thread size bolts, long, like about 3-inch bolts that we took and cut the heads off and ground flats on either side, as you can see there, and threaded them into the top holes, bolt holes on either side here, to hold the dash up, kind of to when you could, for reassembly, to be able to reattach the bottom of the steering column to the steering shaft. That came in real handy. Also, if you're going to try and do this job yourself, if you've never worked with AC and stuff, please take it to a professional to have them take the old refrigerant out before you disassemble it, and then have them vacuum down the system and put new refrigerant in if you don't have the tools or the know-how and never done it before, because it can be very dangerous and illegal depending on where you live. So that's it for this job, and everything's back working. And if you try to do this yourself, be careful and good luck. Thanks for watching.